So we've now identified two types of what we might call dog tax deadbeats. We have folks over here on the rabies vaccine records who had a dog treated for rabies but didn't buy a license for that dog. And then we have these folks over here who did buy a license for at least one of the dogs they own and had treated for rabies, but didn't buy a license for one or more of the other dogs they own that they also had treated for rabies. So we could go with that. We've got a pretty good story already. But why not go a step further and see if anybody who works at City Hall is on either of these two lists? If anybody ought to know to pay their dog taxes, you would think it would be people who would work for the city government. So let's see if that's the case. We're going to use a query for this again, clicking on the Create tab and Query Design. And we're going to work with the city employees data set for the first time in this demonstration. And also the, let's see, the rabies vaccine records data set. I'm going to look first of all for those who are no's on that license variable in the rabies vaccine records data set. So let's match them up again on the matching fields. Last goes with last name. I know that from looking at the code book. First goes with first name. And address goes with address. Okay. Notice here the lines cross this time. That's okay. It doesn't matter as long as they're matched up correctly. And for purposes of our report down here, let me get some real estate for myself. Let's start with the license variable. That's the one that tells us whether they have bought a license or not for a dog that they had treated for rabies. And then let's list information here about the people on the list. Let's do their department, and then their address, and then their first name and their last name. Okay. And one more thing, let's pick up the number of dogs that they had treated for rabies. So we'll get an idea of how many dogs we're talking about here for everybody who shows up. There we go. And the last thing we need to do is specify our criteria here. We could look at everybody, but why not look only at those who are a no on the license variable? To do that, I'm going to look here in the license column, and in the criteria row here, type no. And that's going to show us only the people who are a no on that variable. Let's see, the last thing we might want to do, the very last thing, is sort based on the number of dogs treated, so that we'll have no's with a high number of dogs at the top of the list. Okay, so make that descending order there. All right, I think we're ready to run this and see what we get. I'm going to click Run, and there we go. The very first person on the list is, wow, that sounds familiar, a councilman named Zachary Gray. How interesting. Who has 8 dogs that are untreated, followed by a Joshua Wallace in sanitation who has 4, a Zachary Curie in codes inspection who has 2, and so forth on down the line. We have a total of 17 names on the list. So now we've got an even more interesting story. Now we've got not only a large number of dog tax deadbeats in the city population as a whole, but 17 of them are actually work for city government. Oh, let's save this as well. Click X, and yes, and let's call this, what step are we on here? Step 5? Step 5. Let's see. Dog tax deadbeats in City Hall. Search number 1. We're going to do another one in just a minute. Okay.